Hi everybody, this is Agnes from No Sediment, and today let's talk and taste wines that sommeliers just love to hate and find out if they are really that bad. There are wines that, despite their popularity and millions of bottles sold annually, are somehow constantly criticized and trashed by wine professionals and sommeliers. Think of Italy's three Ps, Pinot Grigio, Prosecco, and Primitivo. Think of white Zin. On one hand, I agree, wine professionals and especially sommeliers should use their platform to introduce world with less known regions and obscure grape varieties. After all, who else can tell you with such an excitement in their eyes why Grossmenseng is such a wonderful grape variety to explore, or why Lambrusco is suddenly making a comeback as Italy's hottest sparkle right now. And I would even go so far as to say that it is essentially their job to educate, introduce, explore roads less traveled, and share their discoveries with the rest of the world. What I do not understand, however, is why anyone would wrinkle their nose in disgust when others choose these ultra-popular wine labels, brands, and grape varieties that have essentially become brands themselves. And then shame the winemakers, shame the companies, and saddest of all, people who choose to drink these wines. In my opinion, this is one of the reasons why wine world can sometimes feel so snobbish. We might not even recognize that just with one sentence we just might have crushed someone's budding love for wine. We all have to start somewhere. And these big brands, famous names, loud grapes are easy to pronounce, easy to understand, easy to purchase without stepping into a posh independent wine shop, and usually crafted in a very smart, approachable way. You know, I am also partly to blame. When I first had the opportunity to create my own wine list at a restaurant, I promised myself that I will not include Pinot Grigio. I wanted to be different, but I ended up having Pinot Grigio on my wine list simply because people kept asking for it. And at such busy place, it was just too much to explain to every single guest why they should drink Greco instead. However, I ended up offering amazingly good Pinot Grigio, and I remember people complimenting it and liking it a lot. So hopefully I managed to offer something special than just the usual suspects. I am also to blame because the wines I have gathered for tasting today, I, a wine professional, don't remember the last time I purchased any of them. And that alone speaks volumes. How can I express an opinion of something that I have not tasted recently? So the next time a sommelier or any wine professional tells you that this is a crappy wine and God forbid shames you for drinking it, ask them when they last tasted it. I guarantee to you there will be some stuttering, there will be some awkwardness, and perhaps there will be some lying. I am not going to point fingers or name names, but I have been in rooms filled with serious wine professionals, many of whom confessed they had never tasted Mateus. People for decades in the industry. So to avoid to become that sad wine professional who trashes wines simply based on their sales numbers, their popularity, price, or availability, and to ensure I am judging purely by quality, I decided to taste 5 popular wines. Wines that many sommeliers hate or dismiss. I might have cheated a little bit here and there, choosing wines to help make my point. But ultimately, let's taste and discuss these wines while they are in the glass. We are serious people here, and we do not talk behind wine's back. And the first wine that sommeliers just love to hate is Prosecco. So the reason why I guess sommeliers just love to hate Prosecco is because it got so big and such a fast pace that the quality just could not keep up with it. The area was expanded and we just got what we asked for. Drink and forget, kind of simple, fruit-driven wine called Prosecco. And I just think that all that simple, fruit-forward wine kind of took over and the great examples lost their voice. So this is what I said, that I cheated a little bit here and there because this is top example Prosecco. So I specifically chose label that says Prosecco here on the back and not necessarily on front. Maybe producer also do not want to put that name on the label because it has that bad image. But I chose a beautiful bottle of Prosecco to taste it here with you. So to kind of show that Prosecco not necessarily has to be this simple, easy drinking and wine that you forget easily. For me, this is the charm that I love about Prosecco. It is just so fruit-driven, lively, zesty, and it is not trying to be something else that it is not. You just kind of get these lively fruit characters that you do not expect maybe in different sparkling wines. It is just fun. It is just fun on the nose. And despite this wine being extra dry, meaning that the residual sugar here is higher than for the Brut, it is around 17 grams, I think it finishes on a dry note. It is not cloaking or it just does not seem sweet. But instead, it kind of gives that sweetness to the fruit. It kind of lifts the fruit here. And I think Prosecco, of any other wines, deals well with that kind of residual sugar in their wines. I think it kind of adds a bit of body to otherwise really kind of light-bodied wine. And it adds a bit of length as well. And actually, while I'm talking with you guys, I feel the fruit like that kind of white, crunchy peach and apricot character on the palate. I still feel it. So the length here is quite long. I would absolutely love this wine to enjoy at a hot summer day or kind of slow evening, you know, sitting outside on the terrace. I think it is amazing. I would not want to mix it with anything because it is a complete wine on its own. I will give this wine 93 points. I think this is beautiful Prosecco. Of course, it costs more than the regular Prosecco. And this actually comes from Valdobbiadene, which is supposed to be one of the top areas you can source grapes for quality, high quality Prosecco. So let's move to wine number 2. And the next wine is New Zealand Sauvignon Blanc. I will be honest with you, I actually don't know really why people hate it so much or wine professionals hate it so much. The quality is constantly really, really high of New Zealand Sauvignon Blancs or like New Zealand wines in general. One of the reasons could be that it is just so out there. It is so intense on the nose. You don't really need to kind of talk with that wine directly when it is poured in your glass. You know exactly what it is. Blind, no blind. It is just so distinct. Actually, that is also another reason why I don't understand why it is so hated, because it shows that really distinct terroir or style or where it's from. Don't call it terroir, but just call it where it's from. It tells you exactly where it is coming from. It is just so unique. And there are a lot of producers, a lot of regions, countries that are trying to replicate the style. I don't think that anyone really succeeds that well. But let's taste this wine. This actually comes from a large, well-respected producer, Villa Maria. So let's smell the wine, enjoy it a little bit. It is just not hiding at all. It is exactly what it says on the label, Sauvignon Blanc from Marlborough. You have that kind of green passion fruit. You have that mango peel here, kind of asparagus, freshly cut grass, nettle, green peas. So intense on the nose. What's not to like? I mean, maybe it lacks that complexity that you would expect from Sancerre or Puy Fumé, but it also does not sell for the same price. Let's taste that wine. Zesty, beautiful, lively acidity, quite nervy in style, but absolutely beautiful in balance. And I just remember one thing. There was a moment when there was a lot of Sauvignon Blanc from Marlborough or New Zealand, like general, that maybe had a little bit of residual sugar, kind of maybe block that or round in that acidity, because Sauvignon Blanc can have quite high acidity. But this one is completely dry, and I like that zestiness, and I like that freshness that it offers. And of course, it is not the most complex or kind of most concentrated wine that will offer you layers and layers of notes, but I think it is really honest, and it is definitely beautifully made Sauvignon Blanc. I will give this wine 89 points. I think it's so decent and so good. I actually do enjoy New Zealand wines in general, and even though this is not the style that I enjoy myself a lot, I don't see any reason why this style should be as hated as it is amongst wine professionals. And the third wine is the iconic Mateus from Portugal. Okay, this is actually a brand that people just love to hate because it is not necessarily linked with or specific origin, except for Portugal, like not specific, like small region. And it is not linked with specific grape variety, so it is usually a blend. But somehow it is wine that people just love to hate, like wine brand that people just love to hate. And I guess it is because you can find it everywhere. It is worldwide available. And I also think it is due to the fact that it has some residual sugar, around 15 grams per liter. And we, wine professionals, usually hate that sugar. So let's smell and taste that wine. Wow. At first, I thought I felt like these red berries, you know, strawberries, raspberries, but then you all of a sudden get that kind of dried or candied orange slice. Really pleasant on the nose. It is also not the most complex, of course, on the nose. It is really fruit-driven, really fruit-forward, but this is what you would usually expect at this level of wines. You want them to be kind of fruity, lively, juicy, and not kind of trying to introduce anything like else into the wine. You know, sometimes you feel that winemaker has tried too hard. And I think there's a lot of work invested into crafting this wine, but it does not seem kind of trying too hard. It seems seamless. It seems easy. Here it is, that little sugar, that little sweetness on the tip of the tongue, the very first thing that you feel when you taste the wine. However, it finishes completely dry on the palate. It is not the sugar that lingers on the aftertaste. It is, I would say, a bit riper fruit style, like strawberries, raspberries. So on the nose, you have some of those really ripe citrus elements, while on the palate, it is completely dominated by these red berries. I will be completely honest with you. I would have not been offended to drink this wine on a hot summer day in Porto, the city that I love, you know, sitting outside on the terrace. It is just really good example of perfectly crafted wine. Yes, it is not necessarily the wine that you will start your collection with, although they have released some magnums, dry styles, that are amazing collection wines and actually have increased in price over years. This might not be that bottle, but I think it is, again, as the previous two wines, completely honest of what it is. There is no kind of oak chips introduced to make it look a bit oaky, you know, or added something extra to make it feel better. I will give this wine, I actually liked it a lot. I will give this wine 90 points. Great wine. Actually, it is really well-made wine. Okay, wine number 4. Of course, Barefoot White Zinfandel. Why people hate this wine? It is because it is a big brand. Of course, you know, we hate everything that comes from huge corporation. But when I was preparing for this video, I read several articles and some blog posts, and there was one that was really interesting to read. This guy, he wrote that Barefoot irritates him. And I thought, okay, it's a strong opinion. And the reasons he gave was that it is inconsistent and that it's dirty. And you know what? Barefoot can be many things. And without even tasting, I can tell you this. It can be many things. We can hate that brand for many reasons. I am 100% sure it is not dirty. This is the wine style. This is the wine brand. You can be 100% sure it will never bottle dirty wines. And it is definitely consistent. I mean, anywhere you buy this bottle, it will taste the same. And if you bought it last year, 2 years before, 10 years before, it will taste the same unless it is a conscious decision to change the wine style. So I think this is the reason why we maybe hate it. It's just, big brand and it's just so consistent. There's no surprises, I guess, with this wine. But let's stop talking. Let's taste the wine. Okay, on the nose. This one actually seems a bit made wine on the nose because the Mateus was really this kind of bright, lively, fruit-driven. And this seems a bit kind of created in the lab. I'm not saying that's the case or something that has happened. I just think it almost seems too candied-like, too polished. But of course we have these kind of bonbons, those kind of sugar candies, colored ones. Some candied oranges, strawberries. And on the nose, the aromas are not as persistent as they were with Mateus. It seems that maybe in the glass, the nose kind of fades quite quickly. Okay, so with Barefoot, white Zinfandel, it is actually a bit different than it was with Mateus. So it starts really dry with this really high acidity. The acidity is quite high here. But then you feel the residual sugar, then you feel the sweetness. It is kind of the dryness comes and then the sweetness comes. And it also finishes quite dry, but here the finish is actually not that driven by the fruit that I was feeling in Mateus, but here the aftertaste is actually driven by the acidity. I think it is really defined by its acidity. It is almost like, I don't want to compare this wine with Coca-Cola, but Coca-Cola, it just has that really high acidity as well. You just don't feel it because that sugar is kind of in this perfect balance with the acidity. And similarly here, you have quite high sugar level, like it's around 35, maybe up to 40, I'm not sure. And you have to have acidity to balance that, otherwise it will just feel plain and dull and sweet and kind of sticky. And I think that is made in a kind of good way, but not necessarily in super exciting way. And yeah, the finish is quite short and kind of interrupted. This will not be my favorite one amongst the wines that I have tasted already. I will give this wine, I think, 85. I think it's a decent point here, yeah. And the final wine that sommeliers just love to hate, Primitivo. And I will be honest here with you because I cheated here a little bit as well. Of course, there are different types of Primitivo out there, and I kind of chose a better producer or a producer known to produce higher quality Primitivos. So let's taste this wine. And one of the reasons why maybe sommeliers or wine professionals do not indulge in Primitivo as much, I think it is because it makes these really opulent, rich, and sometimes kind of jammy wines. And there were few producers, and still are, who also leave residual sugar into the wine. And sometimes it works, and sometimes it is just there to kind of mask some of the inconsistencies or some maybe errors in the winemaking. So I think the story here is similar as with Prosecco. It kind of took the world by the storm, and all of a sudden, there was this huge request for that jammy, deeply rich, off-dry red wine, and Italians delivered. And of course, some of those better, higher quality wines just lost their presence in all of that, everyday jammy style Primitivo world. So let's taste and smell this wine. Okay, so interestingly, this is quite pale in color when we talk Primitivo world, because Primitivo can be really deep, and I've been lucky enough to taste on or judge Primitivo wines on several occasions, like these flights, and you have all these like black wines that you know will stain your teeth and mouth for weeks. This is not, so this is a bit paler in color, but it does have that really distinct, that kind of opulent, ultra rich, ultra ripe fruit character, those blackberries, blueberries, kind of dried fruit character. And there's some of that kind of spiciness, and if we did not talk about a lot of complexity with the first 4 wines, we can actually talk about some complexity here with wine number 5. Because it is not just the fruit, it is not just the primary fruit element, it is some that spiciness, it is kind of earthy element, some wet black earth, some bay leaf character, and you know, those Mediterranean herbs. From the nose, you kind of feel it's going to be big wine. You feel a little bit of alcohol here as well. And I think this one has like high alcohol, like 15%. This is also one thing that Primitivo does. It develops high alcohol levels. So we have that really soft tannin. Tannin is elevated, but it is soft and silky. And we have that high alcohol, but we do not have that jamminess, and we definitely don't have that sweetness. I think it is quite beautifully made wine. I will give this wine this kind of full-bodied and kind of rich wine that hides some of that elegance. I will give this wine 92 points. I think it's really decent and good. And it might not appeal to every Primitivo lover, because it is slightly different in style. It does not offer that sweetness, it does not offer that jamminess on the palate. It is quite serious on the palate. So here you go. We have 5 wines that sommeliers love to hate, and there were only 2 wines that I rated below 90. That tells you something. And all of these wines are not necessarily super premium. I actually think that Prosecco and Primitivo might be the most expensive wines here on this list, but everything else just sells below 10. So that's a big deal. And let me know in the comments which wines you love to hate, which wines you have maybe noticed that wine professionals or sommeliers just, you know, kind of hate and you actually enjoy a lot. Let's have a discussion. And meanwhile, make sure to watch my other video on 5 wines I am buying in 2025.